Hello everybody. Today's video is a continuation of a couple of previous episodes that I did regarding ASA dials, basic disassembly and reassembly on various models and brands. And so far, previously we've covered Minolta and Canon brands, and in today's episode we are going to talk about Nikon, various Nikon models. And see how easy or difficult it is to remove those ASA dials, and let's get going. So first camera I have on my bench is a Nikon FM10. So what do we have here? We have a dial, which is basically a combination of shutter speed and the ASA. Okay, so this is a relatively easy to remove dial. So typically what I do, there's really no settings that you have to remember aside from, putting it back the way you removed it. Okay, there's no spring or there's nothing holding the dial if you remove it. There's no positionings to remember, basically what I'm trying to say. All right, so what I like to do is set it to the highest speed, set it to ASA, and then this little screw we're going to have to remove. It goes counterclockwise, and typically I use either tweezers or needle nose pliers, and that's what we'll do here today, counterclockwise. Now I'm going to use my tweezers, just holding down this dial. I'm going to unscrew this screw here. There you go. I'm gonna put it away, and now the top portion of the dial is this plastic cover. Okay, then we've got a metal ASA numbering scale. Now we do have a spring here, okay, that basically provides resistance to this ASA dial. And if we remove this, and as well as the shutter speed dial here, okay, all we have is basically an assembly here, series of contacts right here, and then the copper washer. So this stuff basically remains in place. Now, the reasons why you would remove this dial in the first place, my guess would be just exploratory, okay, or if you are, for whatever reason, looking to completely remove the top cover of the camera. Okay, there's really no contacts you need to clean or anything like that. So here we go. So there's really, like I said, no contacts, pardon me, no positioning you have to remember. There's no spring, no tungsten wire that has to be placed a special way to put it all back together. However, there is a little opening here, as you can see, that you just need to align with the opening here, and that's what we'll do next when we're ready to reassemble it. Just position it exactly the same way, and it will line up those holes for you. Okay, so that next we're going to put back the spring. Simple enough. And now this ASA scale, okay, obviously has this pin. Okay, that's an aluminum assembly. Just basically line it up with those two holes. Okay, and you'll be able to kind of spring it down, push it in and up. It goes up as you release it. And then lastly, we'll put the plastic cover, line it up, same way here. You see, perfectly lined up the way we removed it. Now I'm going to hold this cover with one hand, and I'm going to put back this screw. Be careful, several times I've managed to lose this screw, and it took me a while to find it. In any case, it goes clockwise. Okay, once it sits here tight enough, I'm going to release it and use my pliers to tighten it. All right, so let's see how it works here. Okay, sets it to 25 ASA, which is perfectly fine, and then goes all the way up to 3200, and shutter speed dial works perfectly fine. All right, so let's position it back. It was before, and we've got our Nikon FM10 taken care of. Okay, let's go ahead and put it away and grab another camera. What do we have next? Let's try Nikon FG. Okay, it's a little more complicated when it comes to removal of this assembly. It's basically on this side only. That's your ASA dial, and separate from the shutter speed dial, which is here. So first things first, what I need to do is remove the film door. Then next comes a rewind knob. So I'm gonna go ahead and, as you can see here, most rewind knobs basically need to be held in place with this rewind fork, and then counterclockwise, it'll remove the knob itself. All right, here's our knob. Now, next thing I want to do is kind of position this dial. It serves two purposes. Nevertheless, it doesn't obviously control your shutter speed, but it uses exposure compensation feature as well as the ASA. So I'd like to set it to ASA 100 and zero out our exposure compensation. Okay, so this one basically, there's this washer here that we're gonna have to remove first, and for this I definitely need those needle nose pliers. I'm gonna go counterclockwise. As soon as it loosens up, I'm gonna use my tweezers to take it all the way out. Okay, it's just the rewind fork that came out, which is fine. All right, so I'm gonna loosen it up and put it down here. Okay, I've got this exposure compensation washer that basically rotates left to right. I'm gonna remove that. Okay, and then I'm gonna take out my dial. All right, here's our dial. Now here's the contacts. So if you feel that the light meter is a bit jumpy on this camera, which could happen because these contacts could get oxidated, it's actually simple enough to remove without disassembly of the entire top cover. All you have to do is know how to properly take out and reassemble then later on this portion. So I'm gonna go ahead and do just that. Here's our contact. Okay, what you want to do is basically, if you feel that it's dirty or oxidated, wipe it with isopropyl or a denatured alcohol. This is what I do usually. And if it's badly oxidated, you feel that there's actually some corrosion on it, just use your magic eraser. That's what I do to get rid of any serious surface corrosion. Okay, and then basically you'll have to do the same thing here. Wipe these contacts, copper contacts. It doesn't happen a lot, but I've seen it a few times when it actually is an issue that causes light meter not work completely, but rather be jumpy or inaccurate. All right, let's go ahead and put it back here. So this is kind of where it was. Okay, now putting it back together is a little bit trickier, so it's not convenient for me personally to align it while this contact is actually inside the body. Okay, you see a hole here. It's a little tricky. It's possible, but you see here, goes left and right. You can do it this way. Okay, align this pin with a hole. Okay, you can also do, actually remove this contact, already preemptively place it here. Okay, so it's already assembled. Now you basically just make sure use your camera body this way, and boom, it's in place, and you don't have to worry about not placing or aligning that hole with the pin. Okay, it guarantees that you properly positioned your dial. All right, we're gonna put this exposure compensation washer back in place, and I'm holding this contact, or dial rather, with one hand here so it doesn't come off. I'm gonna put this washer back, and clockwise I'm gonna screw it back in place. All right, once it's tight enough for us, I'm gonna remove my left hand here. I'm gonna position it, angle it so it's a little easier for me to move. There we go. Now it's fully in place. Let's test it. Goes +2, -2. And now let's check the ASA dial. All right, it's got full rotation. Perfect. Now last thing, we're gonna put back the rewind assembly. Tighten it, and our film door. All right, so here's our Nikon FG. By the way, if my memory serves me right, FG20 is very similar. I don't have one in stock to demonstrate it to you, but I think FG20 uses similar ASA assembly. So once you know how to do it on FG, it's pretty much the same on that FG20. Okay, so now we are done with this camera. Let's see what else we've got here. All right, so the next on our bench is another Nikon, and that is an FM. So again, with this particular camera, here's our ASA dial in combination with a shutter speed. So the only reason why I would ever want to remove it here is when you need to disassemble the top cover, because there's really nothing else that you need to do here to take out the top cover. Okay, and typically these dials do not, once you remove the top cover, do not need to be dug into deeply and reassembled or cleaned. It's almost never a problem unless you are replacing this dial completely because it fell over and that ceramic surface that's basically underneath the dial is cracked and we need to replace it. But in any case, so if you're looking to replace the top cover, what needs to come off is just an outside shell of this dial, and I'll show you how to do that. There's actually 3 screws holding the shell in place. 1, 2, 3. So one screw, I'm going to go ahead and align it here. All right, gonna move the winding lever a little bit. All right, so that's screw number 1. I'm gonna position it so I can get to it from the same spot. That's 2. All right, can get full rotation, so I'll go ahead and swap it here. And here's our 3rd screw. Okay, now that we have all 3 screws out, they're positioned, distributed at the same pace, okay, at the same distance. It really doesn't matter how you remove it. There you go. So as long as this shell is removed, you can go ahead and disassemble the rest of the components, and this will allow you to remove the top cover and do whatever needs to be done to the camera at that point. As you can see here, okay, I'm not gonna dive into the disassembly of the actual ASA dial because basically I only had to do it 3 times as far as I remember, and just to replace the entire assembly with a new one. Okay, so there's no point really for me to do it because it's just 2 screws. It comes off, and you know, but you do need to take out the entire top cover to get to it. All right, so because the reason I'm saying that, because I've seen some of my customers sending me these cameras back, and when they try to do it themselves, and for whatever reason, they actually, just to remove the top cover, disassemble this dial completely, and they weren't able to put it back together where it should not even be touched in order just to take out the top cover. Okay, so let's put it back same way we dismantled it. We're gonna have this screw hole here, position it, align it, and our last screw here. Okay, so here we go. We've got our dial back in place. All right, so this was a Nikon FM. Let's put this away and let's grab a next one. And this is Nikon EM. Okay, so this is a bit different than the previous cameras. So what we need to do next is, see here, remove a rewind knob, and just for sake of the conversation, I was gonna remove the film cover, but there's really no spring, so we'll just leave it on. Typically what I would have to do if I want to loosen up or remove the film door is actually take out the bottom, but for now that will do it. Okay, so what are the reasons why you would want to remove this ASA dial? As you can see, it's a very simple camera. It has 3 modes: auto, 90, M90, and a bulb. Okay, and our ASA dial is here on this side, being held in place by a C-clamp. Now, this camera does suffer from jumpy light meter. It's a common issue. And in majority of the time, the reason being is because these ceramic contacts that are underneath are badly oxidated, and in some cases really corroded, and they need to be cleaned. So this is what will transpire in order to get to it. So for that, I need to get my C-clamp removal tool, and it's going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to go ahead and use my screwdriver, flat screwdriver, to lift this up a bit while I'm expanding the C-clamp. Here's our C-clamp, and now, as you can see, my ASA setting is set to 100. Go ahead and remove it. Now here's our dial, pardon me, the contact, pin to the contact. Now, you won't be able to get to it by just removing the dial. You'll have to remove the entire top cover. There's a couple of screws that this ceramic surface is being held by. Has to be lifted up, and the contacts will actually be underneath. Okay, so it's a project, but we're not going to get into it because all I'm doing in today's episode is describing the process of removal and reassembly of the ASA dial. If you guys are interested, just comment on the video and let me know if that's what you're looking to do, and I'll be happy to demonstrate further steps to get into this area to clean it. All right, so that's all it takes. Again, there's no alignment or positioning or a spring to worry about. As long as you remove it, okay, it should be aligned the same exact way. You'll see that there's a couple of pins here on this rewind assembly, this plastic rewind assembly, and this pin, basically leave it in place. This is exactly how you removed it, you know, and it positioned exactly the same way on your ASA dial. All right, so the next step is placing it back, and it falls right into it perfectly fine. as you can see. And again, if you mess it up, it's not a big deal. Let's say you mispositioned it, okay, it's not gonna sit. It's just not gonna sit. Nothing you can do until you basically kind of approximate it and align it, and there you go. Okay, it falls perfectly in place. Now we're gonna put back our C-clamp. All right, and then our rewind knob. There we go. So this is our Nikon EM model. Simple enough. If you have proper tools, if you have the C-clamp removal and a flat screwdriver, you should be able to remove it no problem and put it back. Okay, all right, so moving on. I think we've got one more camera today to discuss, and that's probably going to be the most complicated, so to speak, in the realm of Nikon models in terms of removal of the ASA dial, and this is Nikon FE. All right, so it's on this side. As you can see, it's an independent dial that controls ASA and exposure compensation, and then our shutter speed dial is over on this side. All right, so let's first remove the film door, and then we're gonna take out the rewind knob counterclockwise. All right, these are various components here from the rewind knob. There's a spring, a washer, also have the rewind fork. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got this C-clamp that we need to remove that holds the entire assembly in place here. And I'm gonna go ahead and use my C-clamp removal. There you go. Now I'm going to carefully lift up this plastic washer slash lever that actuates this spring. Okay, and this spring basically locks in the rewind mechanism. That's pretty much all it's doing. Okay, there's this opening here, and there's a pin that ultimately needs to be aligned when you put it back together. So in any case, let's put it away. Okay, so the next thing I do, have to remember which side it's on, because sometimes these dials will be reversed, so the angle might be different. I'm gonna carefully lift this assembly up and away, and then on this side, there's a pin. There we go. Now we've got it all out, okay? And this is our spring assembly here. Now we've got 3 screws here, 2 regular Phillips screws, and 1 combination screw that combines a pin and a thread that holds this little spring in place. So first things first, I'm gonna use the thinnest tweezers I can to be able to remove it, because I have to kind of hold it in place. Let's see if it works. Maybe I need something thinner. Perhaps this would do the trick. Okay, this is pretty I wouldn't say complicated, but tedious. A removal is not as bad as installation, but I'm gonna go ahead and now use my needle nose pliers to remove it. There we go. Okay, so this is our screwdriver pin. It's tricky because it's just very difficult to hold on to these openings to remove it. It'll be a little more difficult to put it back together. In any case, and now I've got these two screws left to remove. And that's really simple. Okay, now this washer is free, and as you can see, my alignment is 0 and 100. I always follow, in most cases, let's put it this way, follow this same routine. Now I can lift it up carefully. All right, and this pin basically is what controls my ASA setting, this plastic pin. Okay, but it's still not enough to take out your top cover, because I've got this bottom portion of the dial that needs to come off. I got 3 screws. Now let's go ahead and remove these screws. 1, 2, and 3. And there you go. As soon as this washer is out, right here, okay, your camera is ready to be worked on and remove the top cover removed, as long as all the other components are disassembled as well as the screws. Okay, so that's it. So putting it back together, let's go ahead and work in reverse. Our 3 screws go back. That's simple enough. Okay, now we need to position this pin here with this similar, you can see this opening right here. It needs to align. There's really nothing else you can do but to do it the right way, to be honest with you, because it really will not fall into it any other way. Okay, now I'm gonna put back 2 screws on each side. I'm not gonna tighten them yet, because I still need to put this fancy pin screw in there, which will be slightly complicated. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hold this actually not with my tweezers, but with my needle nose pliers to have a better balance. Align it. Hopefully it stays in place. No, it doesn't. Let's try it now with the tweezer. See if we can position it here. There's really not a tool that I can think of that I can use to definitively put it in place. Let's see here. As you can see, I'm continually being unsuccessful with it. So let's go ahead and let's go back to needle nose pliers. It's been a while since I have to do it, but let's try it one more time. I might be blocking your view, but nevertheless, let's see. Am I successful? Is it in? No, it's not in. I was close. Just have to catch that thread. And this is where the problem lies. I think we're good. I think we're good. There we go. Like I said, this is not my favorite part of this camera. It'll get there. It's just gonna take a little finagling before it'll be put in place. But in any case, so you're just gonna, once it's in place, you can tighten it up with the needle nose pliers, just so. Now it's in perfect position for us to continue. And we'll put this spring assembly back the same way we removed it. Position it against this pin, expand it. There we go. It is in place now. And what we'll do is put this rewind fork shell in place. As I go down, it should lock in. As you can hear it here, I'm gonna loosen it up, release it. Perfect, so it's working fine. Now we'll put back the lever, release mechanism for this lock-in feature. Pin to opening. Perfect, it's aligned. Our C-clamp goes next. Nice, okay. So it's in place. Now we're gonna reassemble our rewind mechanism. A spring, then a washer, and then the rewind knob. It's a little tricky to put it back in place. You gotta hold it with one hand. Okay, align it. And let's see. May need to play with this washer a little bit to position it against the lever like so. Now it's perfectly in place. I'm gonna tighten it now. Excellent. All right, so the last thing would be placing the film door onto the body. As you can see, it springs nicely back and forth. So basically what it does, you see I'm not able to lift up the rewind knob for any reason unless I spring and move this lever in this direction. Now I can. Okay, now let's test our ASA dial. Perfectly fine. Okay, goes both ways. I get stuck a little bit, maybe we forgot something, but nevertheless I think this was my demo camera. Might be missing some components, but you can see that it's moving. Okay, as long as it's positioned the same way, I think you should be okay. All right, I wonder what I forgot previously. I may have removed one of the washers for a camera that I did a while back. That's why it's not fully rotating. All right, okay. In any case, so this is your assembly and reassembly of the Nikon FE ASA dial. Hopefully this video was interesting and productive and educational. If so, continue watching. Thank you and have a good day.